Well, as a child, I didn't live in Hull. We lived in Bridlington, and my mum and dad would arrange for me to come and stay with Grandma in Anlaby for 2 or 3 weeks in the summer holidays. And she always treated me to a trip across the ferry, on the ferry, and it was the highlight of the holiday. We'd get dressed, we'd go out onto the bus, we'd get down to town, we'd walk across town all the way down to the pier, which is right at the point where the two rivers join, the Humber and the Hull. And we would get on the ferry and I would watch the paddles turning and turning and turning in the water, stirring up all the mud and the rubbish in the water. What an exciting time! We had to choose a good day because if it was driving rain it was just miserable, and I stood out on the deck all the time just watching and looking, going from one side of the the ferry to the other, really enjoying every second of it. And then when we got to the other side, maybe 20 minutes, 40 minutes, I think it was more the 40 minutes end, we would get off the ferry, the cars would get off the ferry, and we would look around, just like it's like being in a wilderness, like in another part of the world. It was nothing like Hull with its busy city centre. This was just out in the countryside, and there was a train to pick up passengers, but we never went on the train. We just turned round and came back again. And that was the fun for me. I loved it, except when we got sort of into the middle of the estuary, the horn would sound. I was fine after that. I was fine before that. But when that horn was going to go off, I was frozen with terror. The noise was horrific. Well, it was to my little ears anyway at the time. And we would take sandwiches to eat on the ferry. We never bought anything, but we'd take sandwiches to eat on the ferry. And that was an experience. Fancy having a picnic in the middle of an estuary on a beautiful summer's day. And that's how it was persuaded. And I loved it. I really couldn't think of anything better. I was sad when the day went, but you know, when the ferries stopped, that would never have that opportunity again. The Humber Bridge, I don't know where we'd be without it. You can't imagine life without it now. Absolutely unbelievable, really. It has opened up Hull. I mean, we used to be the city that went nowhere, and there were the industries, there was the fishing industry, etc., but we were a full stop. Whereas now it's opened us up to the rest of the country in the fact that, you know, you can get heavy lorries back and forth, trading and moving goods at all times, day and night. There's no stop, and it's been very good for the city. It was stunning watching it build. You could watch it go week by week by week, and you know, the excitement of seeing the towers go up, and the second side, how much longer it was because the foundations had to go deeper. We all knew it. It was all in the paper. And the day that the ladybirds struck, they were up on the top of the towers, and there was a swarm of ladybirds. Now, ladybirds, as we all say, are harmless. Well, they are, except they secrete a certain orange substance which is very irritating if they're scared. And there were thousands of these ladybirds, and they were not attacking, but they were in the air, in the presence of all these labourers working up on the top. Labourers isn't the right word. They were, you know, working on the Humber Bridge, and they all had to come down because they were in quite distress, because they were so uncomfortable because of the ladybirds. So yeah, in the mid-90s, we decided it was a beautiful day, rather like a good summer's day, and we set off to walk across the Humber Bridge to Barton. And we got across to Barton, and it was beautiful, and we sat and we had something or other, cup of tea or something. Then we turned round and decided to walk back, but about a third of the way through we happened to look up the Humber estuary, and I said, "Have you seen that?" And these black rolling clouds were literally galloping over the Humber estuary at an enormous rate. And we got right to the centre, and there was no going forward and there was no going back. The rain hit us, and it was like a wall, and we just stood there. There was nothing we could do about it. We weren't geared for wet weather, and Dixie, our Bedlington Terrier, had no raincoat, so we just had to grin and bear it. The rain rained for about a good 5 minutes, by which time we were soaked. But when we looked down at our dog, it looked as though somebody had drawn a ruler line across her back, and she was just completely wet down one side and totally dry down the other. Now, a Bedlington Terrier has a top knot. That's how she's cut. She looks like a sheep. Some children would say, oh, look, a little lamb. And when it rained, it had flattened one side, so she had one fluffy side and one wet side. Well, we were stood there and we managed to get off the bridge. We got home, threw all of us in the shower and got ourselves sorted. But that was a day to remember. I often, because I live in the next village, we go down onto the foreshore and we say, aren't we lucky we've got the Humber estuary, but look at the view. What can you say? I listen to them reading the news, and they often send pictures of the Humber Bridge across the evening news, and they say, oh, not another Humber Bridge one. But I cannot imagine. There's so many different ways you could take the pictures from, but it is absolutely a stunning view, and I consider myself extremely lucky to have such a view of it.